while our guests settle in, we'll move on to our next session of the evening, The Glory Restored. And may I please invite back on stage Mr. Jyoti Kamal. I'll not let you sit. Mr. Jyoti Kamal. We need Jyoti Kamal on the stage so that he can moderate the next session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we welcome Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh on stage, please. Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh. But before I hand over the stage to Jyoti Kamal, let's take a quick look at the AV, please.
She hails from the Meja Thikana of Bhilwara in Rajasthan and is married into the Royal Family of Talcher in Orissa. From the sets of Kaun Banega Crorepati to his single-handedly restoring an old fort, her journey has been one of making choices that resonate with a deep inner drive to connect with one's roots. Abode to her illustrious forefathers, the Rawats of Meja, the fort she restored has been a labor of love that has had repercussions far beyond just the physical aspect of restoring old glory. Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh has been quick to understand how physical infrastructure can get tied into bringing social change, something that is increasingly becoming her passion. Ladies and gentlemen, Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh.
Over to you, Jyoti Kamal. Can't wait.
Thank you, Misha. So from the sets of KBC to kind of actually coming back to Rajasthan, coming back to Meja, just wandering around the village, looking at your own fort, and then suddenly feeling a twinge of kind of pain on seeing its dilapidated condition, and then thinking about making a little bit of a difference to it, starting small, continuing with it, persistence, and then it growing on you, and then it becoming a labor of love, and then it becoming the passion of your life. I have kind of, in a way, quickly summarized what happened when you kind of saw your fort. So, but what really triggered you into kind of leaving aside other things and then making this the pursuit that you would want? It's like reaching a fork in life where you decide, okay, I'm not turning right, I'm turning left, and this is where I'm going. So what drove you to do that?
Very good evening to you all. There's a very interesting story behind this, and since you mentioned KBC, I think I want to begin with that. So I was working as a content strategist on Kaun Banega Crorepati, and just before we began the actual shoot, we needed to have a technical run-through where, with Mr. Bachchan and the rest of the, crew. So one of us was just supposed to sit on the hot seat and pretend to be a contestant, right? So somehow I landed myself on the hot seat, and I had to come up with like this, fiction story to make myself an interesting contestant before Mr. Bachchan so that, we can just have like a gameplay and just kind of have that rehearsal. And somehow when I started thinking about what possible story I could create about myself, I immediately went back to my roots, and at that point in time it was completely fiction. I mean, it was nowhere in sight. But this is the story I created, that I'm this person who has come to play KBC, and if I win the prize money, then I'm going to restore my fort with the KBC prize money. And of course, Mr. Bachchan knew who I was. I was like the content person dealing with him every day. But somehow he also got very intrigued by the story, and he's like, "Acha, aise karenge," all the questions and all of that. And we had this very interesting game flow. And in the process of that conversation, I think that is where, the whole idea of, I think Meja kind of sitting in Bombay, like I just kind of revisited my place. And then in the next visit home, when I visited my parents in Rajasthan, I said my father was a bureaucrat with the state government. So at that point in time, he was posted in Udaipur, which is about 3 hours from Meja. So I said, okay, let me just take a day trip. So I went for a day trip, and, like you just mentioned that, it had been neglected. The place had been, in a state of neglect for a while. A while would be an understatement. I mean, it had... So yeah, it was sad, and because you have all these wonderful memories of your growing up years, and then you come and see this place where it's been encroached, or some places have been broken, or so basically in a state of neglect, right? And of course, I mean, these decisions are not instant. So then I went back to Udaipur and eventually back to Bombay. I finished my show. But somehow, I think the seed that was kind of planted on that rehearsal just kind of kept taking me back to Meja. And eventually, after I finished that season, is when I decided to come back and talk to my family about it. And, that's how I went forward with Meja.
You're in fact married into the royal family of Orissa, the Talcher state there. You have palaces there. This is a fort. So there's a difference between a fort and a palace in terms of how you can kind of really do it. In today's very tourism-driven kind of industry, you have forts also being converted with high-end amenities and luxuries into absolute state-of-the-art kind of facilities. But is it a challenge really turning a fort into a luxury resort compared to a palace being turned into a luxury resort? Because a fort is not designed for comfort. It's a fort. So you have thick walls, you have everything done differently, your plumbing would be different, everything would be different there. So is it a challenge to really try and turn a fort into a luxury destination?
See, a lot of people have been doing that beautifully in Rajasthan and elsewhere, right? I mean, a lot of forts have been, developed into beautiful avenues of hospitality, and they have all blurred the lines between what a fort was. Now, as we all know, forts were, like you said, they were more rugged, they were more masculine, if I may say so. And forts were mainly built for defense and strategic purposes, right? So they would always be more raw. You would find a lot of stonework. You would find thick walls, like you mentioned. You would find low ceilings, so that in case there's an attack, it will slow down an enemy, and give a chance to the, to the people residing there to kind of save themselves. So fort is all of this. And for me, it's personally, it was such a contrast because, fort is where I belong, and then I got married into Talcher, which is a palace. So suddenly, you go there and there are all these imposing chandeliers and, these curios from, the foreign trips that have been collected over the years by the family. Crockery, there are all these vintage vehicles, pictures and stories and, all of that. So personally, like I mentioned to you earlier as well, the rustic side of it resonates more with me because luxury is honestly something that I've shied away from, because I feel that a lot of time it just kind of gets reduced to, a tool of pretense, which is not the case, Luxury, I feel, also has some very, very interesting facets like functionality, like aesthetics, how we spoke about earlier. And it can also have its root in philanthropy. It can also have its root in communitarian endeavors. And that is what I'm trying to do with both my places, right? So the challenge, coming back to your question, I don't face it as much in Meja because that is really something I connect with. I mean, I'm very happy going to stone quarries and, looking for stones to kind of fit in the, the walls or when I'm making the boundary. So I'm very, very okay doing that. But to the more pure, luxurious aspects in Talcher, that is, a bit challenging for me because personally it doesn't resonate with me as much. But yeah, I mean, today we have all the technology to take help from, and, we have so many references and so many professionals. So yeah, I mean, we'll get there.
Punjab has its share of royalty, but I mean, nothing like Rajasthan. You talk Rajasthan and you think royalty. Yeah. So, and you're a princess. And you are Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh.
I don't take
so I was coming to that. Are you comfortable with that? In modern India, what does royalty kind of, does it sit lightly on your shoulders? Does it sit heavy on your shoulders? What's it like in today's time when you kind of think about it? Or is it like a strange kind of dual thought going on all the time? You feel good and then, you want to kind of downplay it, but yet it feels good. What does it work like?
See, I think, of course, nobody can take it too seriously right? Because at the end of the day, we are living in modern India, democratic India. So if you take yourself too seriously, or if you take these titles too seriously, I don't think that'll get you anywhere, right? So you have to kind of know how to strike a balance.
Correct.
And like Sir mentioned just some time ago that, we do, all of us royal and noble families, we are privileged that we come from a place where, our ancestors have brought about, electrified villages. My ancestor from Talcher, he's the one who started the whole coal mines in the Talcher belt, and today Talcher belt is, one of the most known coal belts of Orissa, right? And if we have the time, I even want to, take the time to narrate that story of Singadwar, which I was telling you. So,
Please.
we do come from a place of pride and a place of we have done a lot of work, right? So, for instance, Singadwar is this facade in Talcher, which is this magnificent facade. It's got like this beautiful 70 feet high a wheel, and on both sides you have these beautiful imposing lions. And earlier this year, the Department of Posts, Government of India even released a special cancellation and special stamp. And they were celebrating 150 years of Singadwar, right? So when you look at it, I mean, it's luxury in all its glory. But then when you look at the story of origin, it has a philanthropic origin, because it was made as a part of the famine relief scheme in the 1800s, when there was this famine that hit Orissa. And this was made as a, by my ancestors on the in-laws side. So they made the Singadwar as a food for work scheme. And this kind of helped in solving the socio-economic crisis that time. And these are the kind of incidents I think you'll find in pretty much every royal family or every noble family out there. So, everything is not just luxury in the sense of pretense. These are things, this monument is luxurious, but it comes from a place of good heart. It comes from a place of philanthropy.
Yeah, like you mentioned luxury, you mentioned it earlier also. Ultimately, what is luxury if you really try to define it? What is it? It is something which is rare because it's expensive, because it requires that much effort to go into it, and to put in that much effort requires that much infrastructure resources. To have that much infrastructure resources requires that much money, and then you produce an article which eventually gets associated with all of that and is thereafter classified as luxury for its aesthetic sense and also for the comfort that it can provide. It also, any one of these alone probably won't classify as luxury unless it's high aesthetics with high level of comfort and satisfaction. So, but when you look at that, the place that we are sitting in today, this is a lifestyle which the Mughal emperors couldn't have enjoyed. The kind of lifestyle that an ordinary person can enjoy today. So it's a moving target rather. It's a relative position which defines your sense of satisfaction. So when you look at luxury, like for example, the fort that you're now restoring, it's something which was built in the late 1870s. It's something that you're working on now. It was built with a different cost of labor at that point in time. Now to restore it is an entirely different cost of labor. So how are you improvising there in order to kind of take it back to its glory at a cost that obviously won't match what it would have cost? If you kind of bring it relativistically now. So how are you working around that?
See, first of all, I have not confined myself with any timelines. So that kind of gives me the freedom to work at my own pace. It's a self-funded project. So, that's the reason it's taking its own sweet time, and I cannot confine it to any kind of time boundary. So that's how I make myself at ease, right? That, okay, I don't have a deadline to finish this. It's going as it's possible to make it go. And so
it's difficult to maintain a 3-bedroom house. How big is the fort?
Of course. Fort has close to 55 odd rooms. So that's what I'm saying, that to make it work, firstly, I am not putting myself under any pressures of time, and secondly, to keep it as authentic. Again, like I was just mentioning the queries some time back, so we had to make like this boundary wall, and I wanted to keep it in this dry masonry format where, the cement should not ideally show to kind of keep in sync with the rest of the property. And just to find those stones which were, slightly plain from one side, which could kind of go with a dry masonry kind of a look where the cement didn't have to be put on it. I had to go to like 12 odd queries across 150-kilometer radius. But, that is something I'm okay to do. So logistically, the challenges are there, but I'm willing to work around those. And financially, like I said, I've not put myself under any kind of time constraint. So yeah, that is what keeps me going, right?
The Queen's passing in England and the kind of media coverage that it garnered across the world, which obviously you would have also seen, was there any kind of association, any kind of relation with it, anything that you kind of felt as you saw all of that pomp and glory that the United Kingdom has held on to and also turned into a sort of a national kind of identity, an identity that works for them? And what were the feelings that kind of went through your mind as you saw all of that?
It's very interesting you mentioned this, because actually I did an article for a national publication on Queen's visit to Mewar, which is the Udaipur belt, in 1961. So I got a couple of interesting anecdotes from there, and which were Mewar-centric. So I think it'll just take too much time. I mean, maybe we could do
let's have at least one of them quickly.
Okay,
we have time for one.
Okay, so there were all these... nobles.
We have Laksharaj Singh Ji of Mewar also coming over, so probably there would be some sort of a resonance there.
So, which one do I tell you? Okay, so there was one about the wardrobe, how all these nobles, the Umraos, are dressed up in this particular way. So, we have, like, all our headgears are mentioned, like a leheria. So it's not just a leheria. We have, there are headgears named after different rulers. So for this particular occasion, everybody wore a headgear known as Amar Shahi. So, that was the particular thing that was worn by everybody, and how they all posed, they all got together at this particular house and how they posed. And then also there was like this very interesting story that in the previous destination, wherever the Queen was, she was made to travel in a German-make vehicle. So the Mewar nobles decided to go in a England vehicle, a made in England vehicle, So that was another interesting thing that came about. So all these royals dressed in their Amar Shahis, they posed before the vehicle, and then they all got together and they went. And then there was also another incident of how the Queen exhibited a sense of humility when, she met like this particular Rav Sahib of this one place. And, obviously, I mean, I don't think the Queen would really remember, but maybe they had done their homework. So, the minute he was introduced, the Queen looked at him and said, "Oh, I believe you have a very big fort close by." So, that like made that person's day, of course. And for as long as he lived, he was, kind of talking about this. And there was this one more incident. There's this one particular house, noble house in Mewar, which is even now known for its cuisine and delicacies. So even in the state times, when any guests would be visiting the palace, the Maharana, this particular house cooks used to be called. And the Queen was served this, and that day somehow the Queen was eating vegetarian. So there was this big challenge that, what can you cook which will appeal to the Queen, and it's vegetarian. So, there was this rural man, from this place. So he made arbi, a preparation with arbi, and he shaped it in the form of a fish. And apparently the Queen was so impressed that she gave him a gold guinea. And, he wore it, that man, Kaluba, his name was. And, he wore it for as long as he lived, and he called it a Queen, Rani ka medal. So, there were all these little stories. And if anyone is interested, they can, find this entire article. It's another publication, so I won't sit here and name it. So, yeah. So.
Great. I mean, it's fantastic that we live in this very diverse country where you were talking about how, there are turbans which are of different styles. It's an amazingly diverse country. Yuvrani Sahiba Priyamvada Singh Ji, thank you so much for taking the time out to kind of be with us here today. And as I said that, I'm sure the interaction is going to continue, but I mean, we are going to let the audience kind of take it from here on.
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much.
taking the time out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yuvrani Sahiba. I would request you to please stay back on the stage with us for a few more minutes while I call upon stage Mr. Siddharth Nivartia, National Revenue Head, Hindi Cluster Network 18, and Mr. Rohit Sethi, Director, EASS Global, to kindly join us on stage and felicitate our esteemed guests. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Jyoti Kamal. Thank you.